included in a. So being that ACHD doesn't have a comprehensive plan, we couldn't really include the provision for the affordable housing exemption at this time. So we're not abandoning the idea. Obviously, it got approval through the CICAC. The city of Boise has stated multiple times that they would love to see it be added. It seemed like there was traction with several of our commissioners. So it's something that staff will still pursue. We just can't really do it as part of this update. So the one that the next major update is supposed to be approved in 2024. I'll begin working on that here in probably less than a year's time. And this will be one of the main items that we're going to keep trying to figure out if there's a way we can make this work. But just wanted to make you all aware of that one difference from what we had reviewed last time. And with that, that was all I had. So if you have any questions, great. If not, sorry, I didn't go slow enough to see Christy or Christine pop on.
That's all right. But I do have a question. If in fact we don't have the ability to do that because of, I'm assuming, Idaho code, does that mean that we have to go to the legislature to get a modification before that can be considered?
That's my understanding. I'm not aware of another way around it. That's why we're not including it with this one. Our legal team did mention that they would at least consider that option. What conversations they've had with our commissioners in the meantime, unfortunately, I just haven't been privy to.
Okay. Well, I assume then that somebody on legal staff will start working with the legislative process. So
yeah,
let us know. Could be a really short meeting. Neither Christine or Christy have been able to get in.
You're muted, Stacy.
Thank you. Christine and Christy are both here.
All right. Well, the next one then would be item 3, Christy.
Oh, that was good timing. Just finished up a meeting and that ran a little bit long. Little back-to-back action going on. Give me 1 second and get my stuff switched around here a little bit. Okay. Does that look good, everybody?
Yeah.
Was that a yes? Sorry, it kind of cut up a little bit there.
I think we're good.
Okay, good. Sorry, and I will apologize in advance. I'm filling in. I'm sure some of you guys are aware we've had some changes going on in our department lately. So Ryan's moving up, and Tom is on vacation. So I'm stepping in.
All right, sorry about that, but when you say Ryan is moving up, where is Ryan moving to?
He is moving up the hill to Orchard.
He got a promotion. He is going to be our new Deputy Director of Technical and Development Services.
So taking Gary's place.
Yep.
Mhm.
Very good. Interesting.
Yep.
Good. Well,
Yep.
congratulations. Okay, Christy, sorry to interrupt.
No, you were just fine. So I am just here to give an update to the CICAC as to where we're at on our prioritization update / review / all of that fun stuff. So where we're currently at is we held our second stakeholder meeting this last week. As far as in the scope of work, where we're currently at is on task 2, which our consultant has finished review of other agency processes and relevant national best practices, our current methodology in comparison to those. They put together a table comparing those methodologies and things that others are doing differently from us. And then they have created a memo summarizing those best practices and then their recommendations moving forward. We do plan to go to commission on June 22nd with those findings to get further direction from the commission on how they would like us to proceed based on those recommendations. So this is what we currently heard from our stakeholders in those meetings. From the initial one we heard, there was a little understanding of what our current process is and how our prioritization ranking is done. And so there was a desire for more transparency on that, as well as desire for a simple and easy to understand process, because some of them can get a little bit muddled. And they also had some interest in cross-modal prioritization. That was something that was brought up by our commission, and our consultant looked at that as well. And then the key question they had that is not currently part of prioritization is how are funding levels determined for road intersection versus community programs. So that was part of our discussion as well. So these are the different jurisdictions that our consultant review in comparison to our current methodology. You can see we saw one from Wasatch, one from Utah, UDOT, from North Carolina Department of Transportation. So we kind of have a variety. Obviously, we were kind of the only one of our type, but there were some good options out there for them to look at and see how we're kind of matching up to what other jurisdictions are doing, other similar jurisdictions are doing. So this is just a table they put together as to how we are comparing to those with regards to a couple of the areas that they specifically called out for the 5-year work plan were documentation available online for our prioritization methodology, that we could do better at that, as well as they call it the application process. It's really our submittal process. So both for the public and then for our partner agencies, they talked about those. Level of complexity overall for our current methodology, we were on the medium to low side. So when some of our stakeholders talked about the simplicity of our process, ours is actually kind of more in the range of what they wanted to see. So the variables we're currently using are currently in line with best practices, processes, and our methodology, like I said, is not overly complex. So the only cons our consultant is coming back is that basically that public facing or that outward facing with regards to the providing more information to the public as to how our prioritization is currently done. So the key takeaways is that most of the agencies that they reviewed in comparison to ours had a website presence explaining how the prioritization process and measures are currently in place and how they're adopted. So the process information in the process informs the decision making, but only one example where the model outputs are only considered our only consideration is in funding decisions. Many agencies tie their prioritization methodology to overarching goals or agency vision. They use similar measures to what ACHG currently uses. There was only one example where there was a true cross-modal prioritization, because that was one thing we heard from stakeholders, and commission was looking at one prioritization. So only one is using that, but all the others had a mix due to the different types of infrastructure that we're talking about. So there was a wide variation, but most agencies did stress in keeping things simple, similar to what we're doing now. So the process in our methodology is we're focusing on increasing transparency and what that looks like, at least a recommendation. And that would be to enhance our website presence, to give an option or an availability for explain to the public how our ranking is done, what goes into that ranking on kind of a higher level, and refine our submission process, specifically too for the application process for the public, making that much more user friendly than it currently is. We do have like a community programs application process for the public for them to submit, but that's currently like a PDF, fillable PDF. So we're looking to increase that and make it more user friendly for the public, as well as posting. The recommendation is posting the recommendation is to post and document the results. So once we're done with the prioritization And we do provide that in years past. We provided that as part of our presentation to our commission as to how all of the projects ranked against each other, but we currently don't post that on our website. So there's discussions, a recommendation to do that as well. And then reference the available data sets that go into those decision making. So continuing with their recommendation is to maintain our current methodology, but improve and simplify it. And one of the ways we currently, with our community programs projects, we separate the ranking and have some different metrics for a bikeway versus a pedestrian facility versus a crossing. They all have their own data sets that we're using. So one of the things they're recommending is simplifying that and just having one set of variables for our community programs. And then incorporate the level of traffic stress metrics that were recently adopted. I believe they were last year. Incorporating that into the method, into the variables and the data set. They talked about converting our road and intersection. Currently, our community programs are on a 100-point basis point scale, and they recommend converting the road and intersections to a similar 100-point scale. And they recommend re-examining the weighting that we're currently giving to all of our metrics to make sure that take a harder look at that, and are we giving the right weight to the different metrics that we have, and then specifically separating out the safety and congestion benefits, and then separating out the density to include federally recommended metrics. So where we're at is this is our current proposed timeline to adoption of a new prioritization methodology. We're still in the May-June timeframe. June is when 22nd again is when we will go back to our commission to touch base, present the recommendations from our consultant, and get direction to move forward. So July, August, September is where we will categorize metrics into outcomes and goals, simplify those methodologies per the recommendation if that's direction we receive from the commission, simplify the road and intersection methodology. And then September, going into October, November, we would then develop and refine submission process, and also work on that website enhancement for the proposed adoption in November of this year by our commission, so that we can then start implement that on the 5-year work plan adoption side, and all of our processes involved with that to get it implemented. I know I kind of ran through that fast. If you need me to back up to any of the slides, or if you have any questions for me whatsoever, please let me know.
Questions from the committee?
Yeah, this is George Mergel. You said you looked at a bunch of the other sites that have methodologies already displayed in terms of how they explain their prioritization. Are any of those useful as templates for your expansion?
Yeah, I think there were several good examples. The ones that had that information on their websites, we will look at those as a starting point for how we want our webpage to be set up, and how we want to provide that information to the public. We want to make sure that it's easily digestible, because we can get some of the stuff that we give to our commission are very in the weeds. We're talking 10-page line by line items. So we would look to provide something that was very easily digestible by the public, similar to how we've kind of changed a little bit how we present our 5-year work plan. We want to make it easily digestible to the public. They can't digest complex information. But it can get a little muddlesome if we try to do it too. But there were several, I couldn't point out which ones specifically, but there were a couple of good examples for us to use to at least start our template off of.
Good.
Other questions?
Hi,
Yes.
Christy, I enjoyed that very much. My name is Kent Brown, and this is not so much a question, but it's a comment.
Yeah.
Based on a little bit of knowledge. And it addresses the issue that was pointed out that you haven't come up with a good solution on how to compare community programs with the other intersections, road programs, and those. I would predict that you wouldn't spend a lot of time trying to do that. And the reason that I'm saying that is in 1973, that seems like a long time
It was a good
in
year.
the past, but I actually wrote a textbook and a
Oh.
workbook on a class at West Point that was taught to cadets at West Point, and it had to do with using systems analysis for making defense decisions. And it was preceded by some studying that I did at Stanford. And what that pretty much says, and I think it to be true, the kind of decisions that have to be made having to do with budget levels where you would decide how much to go into community programs versus other programs that are easily identified using an objective measure. It's not out there. And there was a famous guy that I actually studied under named Kenneth Arrow at Stanford, and he predicted that that wouldn't be so. And what it pretty much says is those kind of decisions have to be subjectively made. In other words, the people that really control that are the commissioners, and what they decide, how much they subjectively decide they want to put into those two programs.
So Kent, let me just ask you the question. Are you suggesting that the process direction may not be appropriate?
No, I don't think I'm saying that. I'm saying that what they need to do before you spend a lot of time trying to come up with some kind of an objective measure is recognize that that particular issue is ultimately a subjective measure, a subjective decision that the commissioners have to make about how they're going to split that. For example, there are, given the parameters and stuff, I'm very familiar with the size of this process because I helped Terry Little put it together. Terry Little really started this process for the highway district. And so there are objective measures involving safety, how much you contribute to safety and reducing accidents, and data having to do with the amount of traffic that you put on roads or across the bridge, and those kind of things that make you able to put together a thing that is more or less objective. In other words, you can come up with a measure of the weighting the various variables and get an objective function that gets it out. But there's not something like that that tells you how much resources you should put into community programs by these other things that are more easily objectively weighed. Okay, for example, you cannot say something objective, you won't do that. You just got to understand that there's an objective or a subjective decision that's got to be made about how much money and resources you put into those programs versus the others.
Well, let me piggyback on that. And Christy, you and I have exchanged information in the past about the integrated 5-year work plan. Are the priorities that we're talking about here those that actually get implemented through that program? First and foremost, is that where these priorities are made? I mean, the priority decisions made are the ones implemented in that plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, during the 5-year work plan process, I spend several months prioritizing projects. And we have 2 staff here, one that does all the road and intersections and myself that does all the community programs. So it takes a couple months because we prioritize hundreds of projects.
Yeah, I appreciate that clarity. And then you, in your conversation a moment ago, you talked about the public process, and I'm assuming that each of the jurisdictions provide to you their list priorities within their jurisdictional boundaries.
Correct.
So how does that weigh compared to possible public input that you might get?
So currently we have 12, I think, partner agencies that we reach out to every year that provide us those lists. And so currently how our prioritization methodology works is if a partner agency, if it's a #1 request for a partner agency, it gets 10 points. And so for just speaking for like the community program, so it's a 100-point scale. So 10 of it, they could get 10 points just for it being their #1 ranked project. So obviously that can raise it much higher in the prioritization. And then #2 is 9, #3, is 8, and so forth. Every single project in their prioritization list gets at least 1. Currently, community or project requests from the public, we don't give a weight scale in the prioritization. We generally will encourage them to also reach out to their partner agencies, because we actually have on our website the community programs, how to request a project. And the very first thing we do is we also recommend that they work with the cities. So if it's a high priority for the city, then it gets higher points and they can help through that process. The other application process we were talking about is a direct community application process that somebody from the public can make. And part of our current process is, let's say somebody that's a block in a residential area and they want sidewalk. And one of the things we ask them to do is do outreach to their neighbors and have them sign the application agreeing that should we need right of way, that they're in favor of this project. That helps kind of leapfrog over some of our public process where we have to go out, because sometimes we'll hear from somebody, we want a project, and we go out and do public outreach and we find out 7 of the 10 neighbors don't want it. This kind of helps that gauge the level of interest by the neighbors to kind of get past some of that stuff. So that, and generally those where they've gone through that full process and they've gotten the neighbors to sign off, those tend to end up ranking higher anyway. Not that there's points assigned to it, but they tend to get up there.
Does that have to then go to, do you provide that information if they have not worked with their jurisdictional city?
Yep.
Do you provide that then for their consideration?
Yep, every community application that we get that comes in completed, because we also work with them to get it complete. We do share that with our partner agencies so that they're aware. We also develop tools for our partner agencies for all of the neighborhood plan projects that are identified through that process as well. So they're also aware of those 1,600 projects too that the public has said they want. We'll see a lot of overlap on that too, where something that somebody may submit a community programs application in, that may be something the city has already asked for, and it also may be something that's on a neighborhood plan. If it's hitting all of those, then it's coming up higher in our prioritization currently.
Okay. Other committee questions?
Mike, if I may, this is Walter.
Certainly, Walter.
Hi, Walter.
Hey, I want, Christie, I want you to backstop my answer to Mr. Brown. I'm the representative to the Prioritization Committee, and I don't believe that the Prioritization Committee is doing any work toward how much money is budgeted anywhere. That's not a consideration of that group. The second thing was they are not leaning toward combining the bike and sidewalks, paths into the roads and bridge work. So just wanted to clarify that. And like I say, Christy can tell me I've got it wrong, but.
Nope. Walter, you have that correct. Yeah, the funding mechanism, our capital allocation methodology is a separate issue from their prioritization. So that's not part of this. And that was in the very first stakeholder meeting, that was something that came up, that there was a question of could we combine them? But especially after the recommendation and this latest meeting, there wasn't really a push from our stakeholders to combine them at all. They were good. They were good with keeping them separate.
Oh, Mike.
Yes, Ken.
No, I understood that, but the only reason I raised that is because it was flagged on one of your first slides.
Correct.
One of our that wasn't included with it, and I wasn't sure whether that implied that there was going to be more work done with regard to that.
Well, we'll find out. We're going to go to the commission, like I said, on June 22nd with the current recommendation from our consultant. And then the commission will further direct us at that point. If they would like us to continue down where we're going with the recommendations, or if there's something else they would like us to look at. So that's the current path. No pun intended.
Christie, this is Walter again. Mike, if I may.
You bet.
Christie, the combining the two came from the commission, to my knowledge. What, has there been any discussion about what kind of pushback you might get from the commission when if you were to have this go in and suggest they not be combined?
I don't think I can answer that question at this stage in time. I know it was one of the things they wanted us to look at when we started this process, which our consultant did. But that's not currently their recommendation to move forward with that.
Correct.
But I guess we'll find out in June.
I would have been surprised at any other answer.
Any other comments or questions on this item? Well, Christie, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
And I think we will move on to item number 4, Christine, and you've come in and out of our screen a couple of times, so you must be there.
Here I am.
Great. Go right
My
ahead.
level of computer savviness is much to be desired. Just awaiting my 5-year-old to get old enough to be able to tell me what it is I need to do.
Yeah.
All right, so again, I'm Christine Tandler, I'm the budget manager for the Highway District. Am I not sharing? Am I sharing?
No.
No,
How about that?
now you are.
Perfect. This is similar to the budget assumptions, similar to that on the revenue side that I gave the commission in March, as well as our public open house that was held in April on the 21st. It's very high level. We're still working through the balancing of the budget and moving some things around with economically where we are with this year's projects and stuff. So stop me if you have any questions. It's a presentation, and then I'm happy to stop at any time to take questions. All right. So I guess we'll go here. So I'm going to go over the major revenue sources: property taxes, highway users fund, reg fees, and impact fees. Currently in FY23, we're doing a property tax certification projection of $48.3 million. That is an increase of both the 3% and the allowable new construction based off of the House Bill 389 parameters that were set last year during the legislative session, and then there were a few minor changes related to it this year, but nothing that overall affected the district. Last year, the commission did elect to take 1% foregone for the maintenance and operations, but did not elect to increase the certification by the 3% foregone for capital projects. So we do still have a foregone balance of over $10 million, I believe. Highway users fund, we're looking at just over $3 million. So this is something that will change this year. There was SB 1231 that was signed by the governor, so no longer will we be tracking House Bill 312 funding separately. That was an additional fuel tax that was added years ago. They've now kind of ratified it. Previously, we had to report annually on our road and street report where all of those funds went down to, was it for striping, for rehab, for traffic control, for design. It was very cumbersome for a lot of agencies. So they wanted to be sure that they're not putting any undue burden there. Now, I will say on this TECM funding, just got an email last week. So originally, the TECM funding, House Bill 362, is that which anything over $80 million, first $80 million will go to ITD. Anything over that goes through the highway distribution account, of which means that ACHD is entitled or calculates out to get 18%. So when we originally did the calculations, it looked like there'd be about 84 to $87 million total collected. So the 18% was calculated based off of that. However, year to date for FY22 means that we're looking at closer to getting a $5 million for FY22. And so that will then carry forward and look at that for FY23 going forward. This is based off, again, state projections, and with this specifically, we are ahead. They are ahead of the collections. The current projection for registration fees is currently 12 and a half, or just under $13 million. This is something the commission has started discussing once again. It does sunset January 1st of 2029. Impact fees, we're currently projecting $24.5 million for FY23. And then the development fees is just under $3 million for the plan review, plat review, street name signs, all the inspection fees that are collected, funding those correlated inspectors. Other revenue sources, sales tax, we usually get about $2.5 million from sales tax. The property and equipment disposals just vary depending on the availability and what's been purchased for which projects. Project related revenue for cost share and federal aid is not currently included in anything until we get more finalized on projects that are going to be planned for construction. And then in those larger ones that have design, I won't have any cost share estimates until we get closer to finalizing the budget numbers. But again, those are typically offset on the expenditure side. So currently we're looking at about $140 million budget. I would not be surprised if this went up by about, could be up to $10 million, depending on some federal funding with some of those cost share projects. This also doesn't include any of the funding for rescheduled projects, which happens, and we're seeing I think we're right about $6 million of projects that are going to be rescheduled from FY22 into FY23. Half of that being Kootenai that was we received no bids on, so we're going out to bid again, and with the anticipation of finishing in about a year to 15 months. And then also is what's not included in here is if there's any use of the priority corridor funding and the like. So again, the planning assumptions we used was 3% plus new construction growth. Now there was the one-time transportation funding bill leading Idaho plan. The funds are to be received in FY22. My assumption is that we'll receive them at the beginning of the state's FY23 budget year, which begins July 1. Of that, those are the funds that the commission is elected to hold for State Highway 16. So there will be some additional reporting and light tracking based on that. And House Bill 772 is related to ITD's budget. ACHD would receive 18% from the allocation of the $80 million. We are anticipating to get that as a one-time amount. Again, I'm not 100% sure if we're anticipating to receive that before or after the beginning of the state's next fiscal. But I will keep everyone abreast to that through the budgeting process. The district is anticipating a double-digit medical increase and dental increase, and then projecting a COLA. The main capital expenditure projects currently are Locust Grove Victory to Overland, and then the Victory and Locust Grove intersection. A couple bridges in Star. Oh, there's the new Victory and Locust Grove roundabout. Some ped crossings on Worm Springs, and enhanced pedestrian out on Floating Feather. As Christy just reported, they're reviewing the prioritization process. They'll start the 24 to 28. integrated 5-year work plan process later this year. And next steps, I'm hoping to get balanced packets distributed to the commission mid-June. We'll have another budget open house where we'll go through some more of the known numbers, the balanced revenue and expenditure data. July 6th, I'll go through the revenue and operations budget as proposed with the commission. July 13th, we'll go over capital budget projects as needed. The August 3rd work session, and then August 24th at 6 p.m. in the auditorium and online is the planned, public hearing. With that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank
Mike,
you.
Mike, I have one for Christine if she can answer it.
Certainly.
I believe you said 24.5 million for 23 impact fees. Do you have at your fingertips or off the top of your head what the 22 impact fees were?
So let me see, hang on.
I'm just looking, what I'm really looking for is the change, not in terms of dollars, but how development's occurring.
I think I have, looks like I just have looks like a 3 or 4% increase
Okay.
on impact fees.
Okay,
That's something I continue to try and hone in on with Austin. As we go through this process, kind of look at where we've been. It wasn't too long ago when we were at $6 to $7 million a year. So this is for sure. We're collecting a lot more. We do currently have a impact fee program balance of over $10 million also. So we're continuing to work to program those, to spend those dollars.
thank you, ma'am.
Christine, I think you follow up to Walter's question. When you'll soon have the number for 22, it would be interesting, and it's just a little tidbit of information that if it could just be passed on to give us what the number ended up being for comparative purposes. And
So actual collections for 22?
Yeah, because isn't that what you were asking for, Walter?
That would get me that answer I'm looking for, Mike.
Yes.
Well, for our weekly report to date, it shows 17.1 million to date for FY22 is what we've collected.
Yeah. So we've
That
got
goes all the way through to October. And actual 21 was $25.5 million was actual.
So I get more of the book year. Well, thank you. And I have one question, and Christine, I don't know that you would have spent any time looking at it, but it's a curiosity question. You mentioned, I think it was House Bill 386 that they threw out at us late in the session last year.
Oh, 389. Mm-hmm.
Oh, 389, I'm sorry, yes.
No, that's fine.
And so when you were doing, the projections, we're going for the 3% plus growth. I'm curious, was there any ability to look at the implications of 389 on those numbers? And was it really a negative or neutral or positive?
So with House Bill 389, specific to the allowable increases, the big one was on new construction roll. So prior to House Bill 389, we could take the entire new construction roll value, multiply it by prior year's levy rate to get us the value that we could then increase our certification by. After Bill 389, we take that amount, we multiply it by 90% because we can take up to 90% of that. We also have to calculate an estimated levy rate for the current year based off of estimated market value rates, which typically then makes the levy rate decrease, and then multiply that by the 90% value of the new construction role amounts. So it did decrease the amount that we could increase our certification by. Is that helpful?
But yeah, but it's interesting to see you twist into a pretzel trying to, because obviously that's what the real result of that bill was a twisted pretzel. So going back to, give us the sheet that shows the total numbers, and I think you said it's about 140 million roughly. I mean, we're getting close to that.
Mhm.
Just for comparative purposes, what was the last year? Again, it's all in old information, and I don't store that right at the fingertips.
Right. So for FY, and so the thing to remember about this also is I call it new revenue. This is revenue that's just new and coming in the door, no reservation that's then going out. If I could look at a cheat sheet with numbers in it. Currently we're at a new revenue of $134 million for FY22, but there was an increase to that for some inspection fees and the like in first budget adjustments, but the original, I can get to the original one.
And while you're looking that up, I assume the same thing will apply to this 138.2. There will either be an increase or a decrease based on the revenue coming in for services and fees. And adjusting.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And I looked at that. And then it's not uncommon that you'll see this is 138 million. And then when the press release comes out, it'll show that we're like maybe close to $150 million budget. And that has to do with the utilization of reservation funds for the priority corridor, potentially for the new facilities, any of those carry forward projects, anything that's considered revenue, but it's not anything new coming in to the district.
Yeah. Well, I have a hunch that we're going to see some slowing on project development. We're seeing and hearing signs of that currently. So maybe on the commercial side, I would maybe expect an uptick, but residential probably will cool slightly. Hopefully not a lot, but slightly.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments from the committee? Well, Christine, thank you. Again, as you get to the end of the fiscal year and can give us kind of the numbers just as an informational comparative, not necessarily through any formal process, but just provide us kind of an update, that would be helpful.
Sure thing.
Stacy, anything else on the list?
That is our agenda.
Do we need to go back and get approve the minutes, or do we?
Well, I don't know that we have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. There are 6 members present. So, but I'm good either way, whatever you.
Well, let's get the minutes out of the way.
Okay.
Walter, did you want to make a motion on that?
I would be happy to, sir. I would make a motion that we approve the minutes of the 28th February 22 meeting.
I'll second.
Thank you. Motion second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Stacy, I just want to make one comment about the minutes. And on page 1, you're getting into the action items. And then when it notes the question asked relative to, one of them says impact fee rates and with and without funded, and then there's a response. When you get into the second page, action item number 2, it's quite unclear exactly what the questions pertain to. It's just the question was asked and there was a response, suggesting that we need to give great detail, but it would be helpful just to kind of tag what the item was, because obviously we have the ability to go back and listen to a recorded the minute or the minutes, I guess, in the reporting form if we wanted to, but that page 2 didn't give a lot of information about what we were asking in the response. So if you could just add a bit of information there, it would be helpful.
Will do, will do.
And then one other item relative to the bylaws. I'm not going to ask for it today because I don't know that you have prepared anybody, but I think based on what I watched, the commission discussed about the bylaws, and it noted in that action that the bylaws were approved as discussed and amended today at the meeting on March 16th without any of our information or involvement or participation. And I guess looking at it, it does suggest that there are some limitations on the appointment of members, who they represent and how many and how they get about. And I think it would be really helpful to know candidly much change over the last few years when it was a period that primarily the public members were only observers and the agency members were the ones that could take the action, and that has all changed. I just don't know quite how any of us really fit now relative to our terms and representation and so forth, and what happens, because it says in 4.3.5, all current members may serve through their current term of office. And then it says, except any employees or officials representing a government entity. Can we just have an update at the next meeting on exactly the membership and the representation, the terms, so that we know how this works or does not for our current committee?
Yeah, that would help me too. So we'll, I'll get legal to making sure. I know Renee came and spoke a little bit that they were going to be revamping the bylaws and changing it to what the law now says. And the law says for this committee that there cannot be anybody employed by a city or a county also on this committee. So so we can go over that. I can have somebody from legal go and give us the definitions. I know that it was very much a priority to get it within legals, but then following out the terms, we do have that opportunity. If you watch the meetings, that, you know, opportunities for ex officio members, there's different ones that also allow. I can certainly send the copy of the new bylaws to the group. Because if there was a couple edits.
Okay, because the ones that I got were from the agenda at that meeting, and so I didn't know exactly what it was that the term and amended ended up being.
Yeah.
I think we just need to know kind of who we are and what we are and where we are.
Very good.
So Mike, do you believe that the bylaws that you sent out are not the current adopted bylaws?
Well, I don't know that they are, Stacy.
Okay.
There were a small edits, and adding that you could have a member as an ex officio was added. I know that it was added that cities could request to not have somebody living within their district to be their member, that they just have to ask the commission for that. They were kind of small, but I will make sure that you get the very much approved minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Walter, did you have any other comments about it though?
No, sir. I would be also like to see the terms and how those all fits together based upon the new rules.
Okay.
I agree. Thank you.
I agree.
Anything else before we adjourn? If not, I don't know that we need a motion, but I would request unanimous consent. Any opposition to unanimous consent to adjourn? Hearing none, we are,
Thank
Thank
you,
you all.
everyone.
Thank you, Mike.
thank you.
Thanks, Stacy.
Thank
Have
you
a
all.
great day.
Bye-bye.